Welcome to Crackit. Today in this video we are going to discuss a very common Spring Annotation interview question. What is at value annotation? What is at configuration properties annotation? When to use at value? When to use at configuration properties? What is the differences between at value annotation and at configurations annotation, along with a code demo and an example? Let's start the discussion. So what is at value annotation? So I have a properties file in my Spring Boot application and I need to access the value from the properties file in my Java application. Then what do I need to do? I need to go use the at value annotation. So at value annotation is used to inject a particular property. So I have a property in my YAML file, or I have a property in my application.properties file, and I want to use it in my Spring Boot application, or I want to inject that specific property in my Spring Boot application. How can I do that? I can do that using this at value annotation. So at value is to inject particular property value by its key. Yes, in the Spring application YAML file, we will have a key and a value pair. So if I want to inject some property by using its key, then I need to use the at value annotation. Let's look the code demo for this at value annotation before we discuss at configuration properties. So this is a Spring Boot application, and in my Spring Boot application YAML file, I have a value called employee age. So and that value is 18. So I need to access this value in my Spring Boot Java Spring Boot application. So how can I access it? As I told earlier, we need to access it using the at value annotation. So inside the at value annotation, we need to provide the key for that value. So what is the key in our case? In our case, the key is employee.age. So that is why I have provided that employee.age here, and I have declared a variable which is nothing but private string age. So if I print that age here, let's see what happens. So this at value annotation is used to inject the properties from my application YAML file or the properties file. That is the usage of the at value annotation. So if you have some properties in your application YAML file and you want to access it in your Spring Boot application, you need to use this at value annotation. Also this there is no need that this employee.age should be static. It can differ from different environments. Suppose for I can set this value in my AWS properties and I can access it here. It may be different for different environments. So only if I know the key value but I doesn't know the value, or my value is going to change for different environments, then I need to use this at value annotation. I have started this application. So in this code, what I have did, so I have assigned this employee.age from the application YAML file to this age variable using this at value annotation, and in my controller class I have created a at get mapping of value demo, and I am just returning a string, welcome to Crackit, this is your age, and I am populating the value of that age here. So I have started my application. Let's go to the Postman and see what happens. So I'm clicking the controller and you can see that the age value got populated, which is nothing but 18 as we showed in the demo. So just to make sure that this code is working, I'm just changing it to 20. I'm starting the application again and I'm going to Postman, and if I hit the controller, you can see that the value now is 20. So if I have any value in my application.yaml file and if I need to access that value in my controller class, then I can go ahead straight away use at value annotation. Also this at value annotation uses the key value. So if I know something is going to change for different environments, or something is static, in both of the cases we can use this at value annotation. There are few places in which using at value annotation is not recommended, and we need to use at configuration properties annotation. At configuration properties will do the same thing as at value annotation, but it has few benefits when compared to at value annotation. Let's first try to understand when or in which scenarios we should not use at value annotation. So at value annotation is too verbose. It is because we need to use the fully qualified name in all the places. So in our demo, if you remember, we have used the fully qualified name, which is nothing but employee.age. If suppose my key value is really big, like employee.address.address ID or employee.address.address name, and inside employee again I can have department, and inside department if suppose I have something else. So I have to use the fully qualified name in all the places, which is like too verbose. So this is one of the disadvantage with at value annotation. And the second thing is, suppose the property is used in 20 different places. Suppose say I'm using that employee.age property in 20 different places in my application, and all of a sudden I need to change my key value to employee.old age or employee.new age for some reason, then I have to change the key value in 20 different places. This is the this is this means a lot of work, and this means like too much of dependency in the key value. So it is not recommended in that cases. So in cases where we are using our value in too many places, then it is not recommended to use at value annotation. It also, this at value annotation doesn't support relaxed binding. What is relaxed binding? If suppose my key value has hyphens or dots, and if I want to use that in a camel case in my application, that is not supported. I have to use the exact name that I have used in my application YAML file. I cannot convert that to a camel case and use it in my application. So at value annotation does not support relaxed binding as well. So if I need all these three in my application, then what do I need to do? I need to use at configuration properties annotation. So what are the disadvantages with this at value annotation? It's too verbose. It is because we need to use the fully qualified name in all the places, and if I need to use that property in 20 different places, and if I need to change the key for some reason, then that's a lot of work for me or the developer, whoever is developing that. And this at value annotation doesn't support relaxed binding. So what is this at configuration properties annotation? So we need to use this at configuration properties annotation when we need to inject similar group of values from the properties file. So if suppose, let's assume I have a employee address in my properties file. So I have an employee key, and inside that employee key I have address, and again in that address I have ID, name, pin code and few other values. So this employee address information is called a group of values. So if I want to inject group of values from the properties file, then I need to use at configuration properties annotation. Also, at configuration properties is to map properties with the Pojo beans. Yes, as I told earlier. So if it is like employee address, ID, name and pin code, I can map this whole address information into the Pojo beans. So I can use this address at configuration properties to map my properties in the YAML file to the Pojo beans. Also, this configuration properties supports relaxed binding, whereas this at value doesn't support relaxed binding. Also, at configuration properties allows JSR 303 validation, which means we can use at not null or whichever the annotations, validation annotations that are present, we can use that inside our Pojo beans of the at configuration properties annotation. Also, this at configuration properties supports metadata support. So I'll all explain this with demo. And one more thing is, if you see here, we told there's a drawback in that value annotation, wherein if it is used in 20 different places, we need to change in 20 different places. But in this case, if we just change in the Pojo beans, that is enough. It will get reflected in all the places, because we will use that Pojo beans if we use at configuration properties annotation. We are going to use services access token, these configurations for the configuration properties demo. So if you see here, the value of these access token, which is nothing but base URL, client ID and client secret, these three are the group properties. So access token is a group property in which it has properties like base URL, client ID and client secret. So in this type of situations, we need to use at configuration properties. So if you see here, I have created a class called as service config. This is the Pojo beans for this properties base URL, client ID, client secret of this access token. So I have created this Pojo beans with name, base URL, client ID and client secret. As I told earlier, configuration properties supports relaxed binding, and that is why even if we have hyphens or even if we have underscores, we can use camel case here. So that's the reason I have used camel case, just to show you the demo that we can, this at configuration properties supports relaxed binding. Also, if you see this at configuration properties annotation, we have a value called prefix, and this prefix is nothing but the key of this property. So the key of this property base URL, client ID and client secret is nothing but services.access token. So we need to provide that prefix value here in this configuration properties annotation. So anything that is inside this services.access token is configured using this Pojo bean, which is nothing but service config. Also, we can use JSR validations here, as I told earlier. So to this client ID, I've just mentioned like maximum value should be 10 and minimum should be 3. Just for demo purpose, I am using this validation. So this at configuration properties annotation supports validations as well. Just to demo that, I have added this property, and to make this validation work, I have added this at validated annotation. So we have a controller class which is nothing but the student details, and you can see that we have slash configuration properties demo, and we are printing all those 3 values here. So this is just for the demo purpose, that is why I'm just returning this value as a string. So you can see that I have auto wired this at service config. So this service config is nothing but the at configuration properties annotation Pojo bean. And it is also, we should note that this at configuration properties annotation should be used along with this at configuration annotation. So I have did everything related to the at configuration properties. I have created a Pojo beans, I have defined the properties, and I have provided the validations, and I have illustrated that the relaxed binding will also work in this at configuration properties, and I have created a corresponding request URI for that, which is nothing but the configuration properties demo, and I am returning a string, and that is nothing but the value of this URL, client ID and client secret. Let's start the application and let's check whether this is. Let's try to access our controller from the Postman, and you can see that we are able to now retrieve the values. So in our code, let's do one more thing. Let's check whether the validation is working fine or not. So if you remember, in our Pojo class, we have mentioned that our client ID size should be maximum of 10 characters and minimum of 3 characters. So what I'll do is I'll add some more values which is greater than 10 here, and let's restart the application and let's see what happens. So I've started the application, and you can see that our application is not able to start, and the exception is bind exception, and that is nothing but services.access token.client ID value should be, the size should be between 3 and 10, but our size is greater than 10, and that is the reason the application is not able to start. So we can make sure that at configuration properties validation is also supporting. We have already verified relaxed binding because we are already using relaxed binding only here. So with this, we can prove that the validations is working fine in this at configuration properties, the relaxed binding as well. So with this, we come to the conclusion of this video, which is nothing but what is at value annotation, what is the differences between at value annotation and at configuration properties annotation, when to use at value, when to use at configuration properties. So if you like the video, please like, share, comment and subscribe. Please share the videos with your friends who are preparing for interviews. Please help us to reach the videos to a lot of people. Thanks for watching Crack It. Stay tuned for the updates.